Hey guys, Chris Dick here. Today I'm going to be talking about we're going to create a minimum viable product for our web interface on our student tracker database. And it's fairly simple what we're going to do. Now, a minimum viable product simply means that it's going to show most of the features that we expect our product should have. We're not going to get too deep in this particular video, but we're going to get a little further as we go. As you know, I like to sort of break up sessions, so we'll have a few different sessions. This first one is about just getting the project set up and using the database and creating user accounts and that sort of thing. That also involves code migrations. So let's, with all that, let's just get started and see how it goes. So we're in Visual Studio Community Edition, and we're gonna click on New Project. You can also go to the File menu and do the same. And from here, we're using a C# template. We're going to use Web, and we're going to select the ASP.NET Web Application for .NET Framework. All right. And the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to store this on my desktop, so I'm not going to get too complicated here. But I'm going to call this Student Tracker Web. Okay. We can set up all this stuff, but I don't think I'm going to bother setting up an application on my cloud site, on my Azure site. We're just going to all keep everything local here. So once we've got all that set up, push OK. Now I've stored mine to my desktop. You can obviously store it to wherever you choose. All right. Now, once again, we have some choices here. We can create an empty website, a web forms website, MVC, and there's a few others here, but we're not gonna deal with the other ones. We're gonna deal with just an MVC site. Okay. We have a couple other authentication methods that are also very valuable here. We can choose no authentication. In other words, it's not going to set up any user account setup information, but we kind of want to do that, so we're going to add it in just to show you some of the features of code migrations. And it also allows the features of logging in using your Facebook, Twitter, Google, or Microsoft accounts. So I'm going to leave it as is, cancel that out. We're not going to be hosting on the cloud, and I'm going to click OK. All right. Now what this is going to do here, it will create our project just using the default information. We're going to have to do a little bit of configuration to get our student tracker database set up and working, which means that what we have to do as well is we have to set up some models, and we have some really nice features in Visual Studio that will allow us to build our models very, very quickly. Unlike when we were doing the ODBC project where we had to manually enter things, we're going to be up and running fairly quickly here. Okay, we're all set up here. Let's maximize this and give us some more space. Now, what we have, again, we've got our basic template here. It has all of the default information. So we've got accounts, we've got our home pages, we've got other management pages for accounts. What we're going to get started off now is we have to add in our models from our student tracker database. Now, we can't do that yet because what we have to do is set up our web config here. Okay, our web config file, we're going to be just working on the connection string, this little area right here. Okay. Right now it's set up so that, and I'll describe this here, so the data source is local DB and it's MSSQL local DB is the server. Okay, when we log in and create new accounts, it's going to create a file in the data directory. Okay, that's this directory right here. Okay, and it's going to be called this long name here, and it's a .mdf file. Okay, we don't want that because we already have a database set up. All right, so we're going to make some modifications to this. So we know that our server name is bdat1004. Okay, if you have another one, then you go right ahead and make that change. Okay, and then of course our what's called initial catalog. Okay, that's our database. Is called student tracker. Okay, the rest of it we can keep pretty much the same. I'm just going to move this up to one line here. Okay, so we'll keep the rest of it the same. This is all right the way it is. We should be able to start connection with this, and if all is right, I'm going to run this. And we have a couple things that we have to do once we get into our database. Now, I'm going to test it for one by creating a registration. But if you recall, we haven't done a lot of changes to our database other than keep the standard tables that we've been working with. What we're going to be doing now, when we add register, it's going to automatically add the user management tables that ASP.NET uses, which is a kind of a cool feature. That, like, setting up those features would have taken hours before, and the way this is now, it's you'll see it's literally seconds. So huge benefit there. Okay, here we go. We've got a nice looking site here. This is using Twitter Bootstrap, and it has all the nice features. Looks like a very professional website already. What we have to do here is click on the register button. Okay, so our register feature here, we're going to just put in our email address. Okay, throw in a password, and I think we're pretty good. We just click on register now, and no. Now, what we have here is, if I go back into our, actually I'll stop that for a moment. If I go into our server, refresh that. Okay. Now, in our tables, you're going to see that we have a few extra tables that we didn't create before. All right, so we have migration history. This is a tracker to know what code migrations have been done. We won't be focusing so much on that. The roles data table that tracks all the roles that are available, such as user or administrator, things like that. Claims, not sure what this one does. Let's find out, see if there's any information based on the columns. Don't know yet, but one day I'm going to look into that and find out. Okay. Logins, this just tracks your logins. That's the user IDs and profile IDs. User roles, this is the table that tracks what roles a user is assigned to. And then, of course, this is the actual user tables. Okay. And we have some information here that can be tracked as well: email address, phone numbers, things like that. And you can also add in names and all the rest, just like we did with the students. So if perhaps you wanted to set it up so that your students were, were part of that login process, you could link those tables pretty easily. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. All right, now that we've got our database set up, we can now do a process here that we're going to be adding our data entities or data models. Okay, so here we're going to go to Visual C# again. We click on data. Okay, and we're going to do ADO.NET entity data model. Okay, we're going to give this a name and we're going to call this data context. Spell it right, there we go, data context. Okay, and our data context essentially manages all of our data objects in one place, and that's a very important space because it gives us lots of ability to just use one object instead of a whole bunch of objects to reference our data models. So we're going to select code first from database. Okay, I'm going to save this connection in web config. We don't really need to do that because we already have our data connection. And from here, we can now select the tables that we want to use as our models that we're going to pull in. Okay. All right. All right, and then one thing that we have here, we're going to do these anyway, but we're going to do, we have some views that we can import. So these are the ones that we've created before. And it's sort of, these are views that can sort of prove that our data relationships are working when we actually get to that point. And then this point here, it says pluralize or singularize generated object names. So what this is going to do is it's essentially going to add in an S, right? So it just, if it was student, it would add an S and make it students. Obviously what pluralization means is that if we're referring to a database or a table, for example, a table is a collection of many entities. So in our case of students, we have each entity is one student. The table is many students. So essentially that's where pluralization comes from. We'll click finish here. Now this should be a fairly quick process here. It'll create all the models in our models folder. And that's, by the way, that's why I right clicked on models and created the new item in models. Very important point because what it you can really just create that item anywhere, and it may not be the right spot, so we've got to be careful where we put things. Now, one thing I have noticed, and this could be because of the pluralization checkbox, I really haven't tested it out, but one thing I did notice is that we have some issues with the name of our objects. Okay, and you'll notice that it saved course without an E, and you see it's over here as well. So we're going to make some updates very quickly while we've got the opportunity. Okay, so we're going to change that. Now Visual Studio recognizes automatically that the file name has been changed, then it asks would we like to rename the references, and we want to say yes. You'll see that it updates it over here, which is also really handy. We also have this other one, students course, and that is also over here, so we're going to just correct that issue. Okay. All right. Now it looks like we're pretty good. So what we have here in our data context is we have this very nice system where if I refer to my data context, I could go say data context dot addresses, for example, and I could work with the addresses object, and you'll see what we mean when we get to that point. All right. Now, one thing you'll also notice is that it's showing here as I have to use name equals data context. Well, we're not actually doing that. We're going to be using the default connection. Okay. I could just leave it blank and it would use the default connection, but I'm going to make it a little more obvious so that everybody can see some of the things that are behind the scenes. Okay, excellent. All right, now the next thing that we have to do, we have to build our project again. Okay, and by building our project, it just sort of makes all those objects that we created, it makes them real. Right now, they don't exist in the project other than the fact that they're in the models database. Once we do this, it creates the libraries and packages that we need to reference it in some of the tools we're going to be using in a moment. So from controllers, I'm going to click on Add. I'm going to click on Controllers. We're going to create the Students controller. Okay, and we're going to create an MVC web or controller with views using Entity Framework. Okay. At some point, we're going to also integrate some web API features, which will also be very handy when we start working with JSON and filling our information up with using some JSON calls. All right, so we're going to select student as our model class. We're going to use data context. That was our data context I was just showing you. All right. We don't need to worry about anything else here right now. We're not doing async controllers. So we are going to click Add. And this process takes a little bit of time because it has a lot of files to produce. So I'm going to try to fast track this a little bit as we go. Okay. We have our controller here, and what we have, I'll explain it to you here. We have a view called our index. Okay, this is actually our controller here, not our view. But what the index action does is it interacts with the index view. Okay, if I right click within this index view, I can click Go to View, and what you're going to see is that it's an HTML page with C# code mixed in. Okay, we don't need those extensions right now. Good. All right. Now we've got a few red underlines. Those will disappear in a moment as it updates. But just so you understand how this page works here with our index, we have a model that is going in. It's called an IEnumerable. And an IEnumerable is basically something like a collection or a list or a dictionary. It's what it's telling us here is that it accepts a list of students. Excuse me. And from going through here, what it does is it takes a table or creates a table, okay, and gives us the headings for the table, okay, and then it does a for each loop, which then goes through all of the items in my model. Okay, remember my model is up here. It's a list. So for every model in or entity in my model, it can grab the first name, last name, date of birth, create date, edit date. Pretty simple information. This is, if you recall, this is all information that we had in our database before. Okay. This set of action links, that is our edit, delete, and details functions, and once we actually play this, you're going to see how that works. And as you can see, each one of the views and action results relates to a view here. So if I click into details, that means I'll have a view. If I go to view, go to the view, I'll actually be able to see the details. And again, similar to index, but this is only one student that it's taking in. Okay. cancel out of that. All right, there's a few other things that are also quite interesting here, new to MVC 5. This statement here is necessary but not integral. You can take it away or you can keep it. We're going to keep it for now just because it's there. But you see there's create and edit, there's delete, and then this dispose method that essentially just cleans up any of the loose memory that's floating around. And we're not going to worry too much about all that stuff right now. Okay, so let's click play. Okay, now what we're going to see is we don't have a way to access our students yet, so we're going to be creating that in a moment. But just to test that it works, we're going to just type in the URL and go to it. Okay, so it's going here, and all we have to do is type /students at the end of our URL after the port number. Okay, let's close this one up here. Okay, so here's our list of students. It's very simple. I can click on edit and it will bring me up all the information on that one student. Okay, the details, same thing, one student. And if I chose, I could click delete. This is just confirming that do I want to delete or not, and I could say delete, and then it would do that. If I go back to list, it brings me back to my list. Okay. Now the home page here, we have some basic information here. What we could do is we can add in like some links that we want, for instance, going to students and that sort of thing, or we can put it up in our nav bar. And I kind of think that what we want to do is put it up in our nav bar. So let's find out where that file actually exists. And now, if you recall, these are views, and that main page should exist in our layout. Okay, it's under the shared folder. Here's our funny red links again, but they will go away in a moment. Now, if you'll notice here, we have this location called navbar. I'm going to put a link right here, call it students, and this is index. Okay, so what just so you understand what how this works here, so everybody can see it. The first area here is the text that will show in the navbar. Okay, this is the action result. Okay, and then this is the controller name. Okay, students controller is the actual file name or the class, but you don't have to type out students controller. You just have to type out students, and it'll recognize where to go. Index, as I mentioned, is running this code. Okay, so let's save that and we'll run it again. This should be a little quicker this time. And if I just refresh that, you'll notice that it comes up right there. Now, starting an MVC application can be a little slow at the start. My computer doesn't help. It's a little bit slow right now, getting bogged down with a lot of memory issues. So there we have it. So if I click on students, it should bring us back to that nice table that we saw earlier. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and we're going to start working on some other developments in this project, namely adding in API capabilities that will work with JSON, and using some jQuery as well. So, hope you enjoyed this. Remember to like and share, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys.